Hello, my name is Bhavani Patel, and in this video, I will be discussing lesson design. I will be sharing with you our daily schedules for hybrid learning for our elementary schools and the various perspectives we can take to help us create a workflow for our lesson design. I will also be going over teacher schedules, student schedules, and share options for planning a workflow. I will provide you with resources for you to copy and modify to meet your needs. Let's start by discussing daily schedules for elementary. We were given a teacher schedule depending on start times of our school site. We want to make sure that we're addressing the needs of all of our students, both the in-person groups as well as our distance learners. There are various options in interpreting and modifying this schedule. Please consult with your PLCs and site admin in which manner you structure your daily schedule. Let's take a look at the schedules we've been given and look at it from different perspectives. Let's look at some possible layouts of how we can structure our instructional day with the various groups of students we have. As you can see, we have both schedules for early start schools and a schedule for late start schools. What we notice in these schedules is we see a Monday-Tuesday cohort and a Thursday-Friday cohort, which is Group A in person for Monday and Tuesday, and Group B in person for Thursday and Friday. Essentially, our third group is the online learning group, which is Group C, and they are in the afternoons synchronously across the 4 days. So we have 3 groups we have to keep in mind. Again, Group A will be in person Monday, Tuesday. Group B will be in person Thursday, Friday, and the last group, which are our distant learning, our online students, essentially what I'll call them for today's presentation, will be Group C. You'll notice that they are all 4 days under synchronous instruction. We do see all groups for remote learning on Wednesdays. And again, the times will depend on if you're early start school and you'll be with them from 7:30 to 8:25 on Wednesday. Or if you're a late start school, you'll be with them from 8:40 to 9:30. I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to tackle this, but please be sure to collaborate with your PLC and site administrator to see which workflow works the best for the students at your school site. So as I said, I'm going to show you some multiple layouts of your instructional day to work with the various groups. So in this first one, I'm going to show you of how we can repeat instruction for cohort A and B over the Monday, Tuesday. So essentially my group A that comes in Monday and Tuesday, you can see I've labeled it day 1, day 2, and it's color coded. So the color in the light pink is for my cohort group A. My light blue represents group B. And you can see the purple, the light purple, is what I use to represent Group C, essentially what I call for this training purposes our distant learner group. So essentially, you repeat instruction is, again, this is one way to look at it. I can do my instruction for Group A, Monday, Tuesday, including all of the content areas. I would repeat that Thursday, Friday for my Group B that are there. And essentially, in the afternoons for my synchronous time when I meet with my distant learners and my alternating groups, I would do that over 4 days. So essentially, I would have planning here that I repeat from Monday, Tuesday to Thursday, Friday. And essentially, what I do with the in-person group, I spread apart throughout the 4 days with my distant learning group. We do see that you do have Group B that joins Group C on Monday, Tuesday, and you do have Group A that joins Group C. But I do want to stress the importance of making sure that we are focusing on our distant learners as well. Also, since there is no official time block, we do want to incorporate designated ELD in this time frame as well. And so obviously you will have other students that join in, but we do want to make sure that we are giving a cognizant and intentional focus on our distant learner groups. So again, that's one example of going about your instructional planning. So essentially, this will hopefully help you see. Essentially, I'm planning this content area, I'm repeating it here, and then I'm going to take what I did for day 1 and day 2, and I'm going to spread it apart for over 4 days for the afternoon group. Here's another option or perspective. This is where you teach the content and repeat and modify in the afternoons. So essentially you can see day 1 with my group A then is modified for the bottom for group B and C. Same goes for day 2. It repeats and it's modified day 3 and day 4. So essentially this is 4 different blocks of I'm planning of what's happening on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and I'm modifying and repeating it in the afternoons. As you plan for the 4 days of instruction in person, you will have to think about how you're going to modify that instruction for the afternoon groups. We do want to ensure that we continue to focus on what I call Group C, or our distant learners, as this time block right here is the only time block in the afternoons that essentially will get to interact with those students, and those students will get to interact with us as teachers. So as I stated before, we just want to be intentional when working with the various groups, but focusing on Group C as well, because these times are the only times that we're going to be able to see our students. So essentially these are just various perspectives or options that you can use with your kiddos that help you lesson plan and how to structure our day. And as we know, we can move the content of our instructional blocks. In these examples, they're just placeholders, but please be sure to refer to your site in terms of specifics of staggered recess schedules, specials such as PE and music, being delivered remotely, and whatnot, and how SEL will be integrated. But these are just a different perspective to help you with your lesson plan and your lesson design. When it comes to lesson planning, we all have different styles, tools, templates that we use. I wanted to show you one example of a template that can be used to go over the various layouts we talked about. I want to show you how you can align the various options in your lesson planning. As stated earlier, these are just samples for you, so you do have the option to copy and modify to suit your needs. They are located in the additional resources. So for example, here's a Google Doc version that goes over the schedule that we were given. And again, please modify to suit your schedules in terms of recess, music, PE, etc. So essentially this just takes the schedule that we were given, and we have spots to put in our standards, our objectives, our lessons. Again, it's grouped with Group A, Group B, and then you can see at the bottom for the synchronous, we have Group B and C down here, and we have Group A and Group C down here. And again, I use Group C for my distant learning group, and you have options to put in work for your asynchronous. So essentially it's just a Google Doc. This is our Wednesday schedule in terms of the Zoom link, since all of our students are going to be joining us through Zoom that day. If we do a SEL check-in, if we want to go over and assign the asynchronous work. So basically these are the templates. Here is the late school start sample. So again, the times have been modified on here. So a basic Google Doc for you to go through, and if you wanted to add content, here is, and I'm all about the options, here's another option. So in terms of if you want a lesson plan and you want to use one of the other methods where we essentially repeat the instruction. So if you wanted, you can go through and have columns and block out and create your lesson plans for how ELA will look like for over day 1 and day 2 for both hybrid A, Group A, and Group B. Same thing for math, same thing for designated ELD. And essentially we can take the content here. How will that look for your Group C, our distant learners? How will we modify that over 4 days? And again, you have spots for asynchronous. So again, this is a basic template. Again, it's located in additional resources. So you can go ahead and file, make a copy, and edit. The next thing I'm going to show is what it looks like with your actual content. Here's an example of the lesson planning template with actual content. So for today's example, I just used Kindergarten Unit 5 Week 1. So in this first sample, this is where instruction is repeated for groups A and B for the morning in person, and then it's modified instruction for distant learners over 4 days. So essentially you'll notice that Group A, day 1 instruction with what do living things need to grow as the building background. This whole lesson for ELA and social studies is essentially repeated on Thursday, day 1 for Group B. So you can see that essentially I'll create the content for day 1 and I'll copy and paste it over to Thursday, day 1. Again, if this is the perspective option that you choose to do, then essentially this is what it will look like with your content. So the content that I have for Monday in person will be the same that I have for Thursday in person, and then day 2. And again, you can see it's labeled day 1, day 2, day 1, day 2. So you'll notice the content here with the oral language, closed reading is the same over here. And essentially what we're doing is we're repeating this instruction for Group A to over here with Group B with instruction. And then as we're going through and we're looking at math, you would again have, this is an example from Bridges for Unit 5, Module 1, Exploring Shapes. And you would have your Session 1 and Session 2 with Group A. And then you would repeat that with Session 1 and Session 2 on Thursday and Friday with your Group B. So essentially, and for designated ELD, this example is with science with using Amplify Science. So I would break up the lessons for designated ELD between these 2 days, and then I would repeat them these 2 days as well. And essentially, when I go down to my synchronous, I do want to go through and I modify for our groups right here. Essentially, Group C, again, is the focus. Our distant learners is the focus we want to be with, because this is essentially the only time they'll be with the teacher, as opposed to Group B and Group A. But essentially, we'll go through and modify and make the adjustments we needed from the morning instruction to the afternoon. And as we know, for synchronous instruction, we are still going to do ELA, math, the science, and social studies and history, the ELD. So you're just going to block it over and spread it over 4 days. So that's one sample that we talked about. Here's the other example for sample 2. This is where its modified instruction is repeated in the afternoons. So here you'll notice that it's a different lesson for Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. So as you can see, this is different content over the 4 days. And essentially what I'm doing with Group A in the morning, I'm going to be modifying and doing it in the afternoon for my Group C. So essentially between these two templates, again, it references back to the two perspectives of how we're going to lesson plan. I can choose to where I do the regular lesson planning for 4 days, and then I modify it for the afternoon sessions. And essentially same thing, I'll do my designated ELD lessons, the 4 different lessons, and then I'm going to modify them into my synchronous time as well. So this is just an example of how we can take the content that we have. And again, on Wednesday, again, depending on your site, what you'll include in your Wednesday check-in with your kiddos, whether it's SEL check-in, if you're going over asynchronous work. I've also put in the example, if you're going to use something like choice boards for asynchronous, you do have a copy in here. And again, all of these templates are located in the additional resources. Feel free to make a copy and edit, but essentially this might be an example of an asynchronous for kindergarten, where they have videos to watch, Nearpod activities to do, and then obviously other tools that we apply. So again, these are just samples for you to go through, make a copy, modify, and work with what works best with your site schedule. Take a look at hybrid schedules and look at some student sample schedules that we can push out. So essentially, you do want to push out a different schedule for each group, Group A, Group B, Group C, which is what I call for our distant learners. I've made Google Doc versions of these available to you as well. They can be located in the additional resources section. So essentially, we want to make sure that the schedules we're pushing out, the student schedules, are visually appealing and simple to understand for both students and parents. And so essentially, this is just an example of how we can lay out our structure. Key being that we show the parents and the kids of which days they're in person and which days they're doing asynchronous and the time schedules. So essentially, I've created schedules for Group A for both the early start and late start. For Group B, both, again, early start schools and late start. Please modify these time blocks and this schedule as you will have other specials put in, pull-outs for support groups, various things. So please feel free to copy and edit of using these schedules. And again, we just want to make it simple and visually appealing. Here's a different option as well. So maybe this is a version I want to push out where it has the time. And again, it tells the students and the parents if the students are attending in person, when they're doing asynchronous work, what their Wednesday schedule looks like, and a note about that support services might be scheduled for students during asynchronous time. So there's various schedules that are located here, and you can use Google Classroom, Seesaw, Synergy, or any other tool you use to communicate with your parents and students and distribute the schedules for them. So again, just very simple templates, and again, in additional resources of how we can use these sample schedules to push out for our kiddos. As I wrap up, here's some things to keep in mind. Please consult with your site admin and your PLCs for the specifics of your daily schedule. As we know, your site admin will be releasing schedules for your staggered recess, your PE, music, etc. Second point, we want to be intentional with our instructional time with our distant learner group, which is the Group C I've referenced. So we really want to be cognizant of how we spend our time with them. This is for my grades 3 to 5 teachers. Your schedules will vary depending on the CASP testing schedule, but this will give you a good idea of how you can start planning your instruction. Also, please reach out to your instructional site coaches for further support for lesson planning. And lastly, all of the templates I've shared and shown in this video, you can copy and modify, and they're all located in your additional resources. Thank you for your time.